All right, we're back to chapter 3, part 4. So we're going to carry on and try to figure out this error that occurred right here when we typed in our first name and our last name and it concatenated those two and didn't quite work. So I'm going to stop this from running. Now this one obviously doesn't work because we haven't coded it. This one will work, so I can close the form down. So it looks like that second part didn't work. So I'm going to simply just go back and try it again. So I'm going to say, take my first name and I'm going to go plus, let's go in here and try the text for the last name. And I put a dot, and let's put in the property called text, and put in, I guess a tab will work there, and that'll finish it off. So it looks like it's correct. So let's go back in and recompile it. And when we recompile it, it takes a couple seconds, and then there's the program. We'll type in our name again, tab, and I'll click in display name. And it looks like it worked this time. So sometimes by just redoing it or doing it carefully, we'll fix the problem. So if you're ever experiencing a problem, try to look at the code, maybe redo it. That's not 100% correct in the functionality, the logic. We need a space in there. So what I'm going to do is I want to take my first name and add it to my last name, but I also want to add a space. To add a space, I'm just simply going to put in a quote, space, quote, and put in a plus sign in there. And then when I recompile it again, we test it, and we're going through that developmental cycle over and over. That's sort of an iterative process where we're looking at the logic and we're trying to figure out, and we write the code and we test it, and it works now as designed. So this is pretty much working as the original executable that I gave you for the in-class to work for the display name grade. Now that's how this first one works. Now we're going to move on to the next program right here, which looks very similar. We type in the days of the week, the month, the year, and we basically just concatenated it together again. But this one, we're going to take a little bit different approach and use what they call variables to do this. All right, so to do that, I'm going to shut that down, and we are going to look at this one in a way of how the variables work. But before we do that, let's do some housekeeping. We have to make sure that all of our controls are named properly. So this is called text box weekday. We did that one. That looks good. This one's going to be called the text box month. And I think for the sake of time here, I'm going to simply go in or pause the video, and I'll fix all of those and then come back. All right, well, I went ahead and I went through, and you can see here I renamed these controls. This one's just going to be a text box weekday. That's a text box month, text box day, text box year. This one here is a label for the full date, and this one, of course, is a button, and it is for display date. So the first step is getting, of course, all of our controls. Getting our controls named properly is what we want. Now, in this example, it's a little different in how we're going to approach the problem. In this example, we're going to take all of the input data that we've got here and temporarily store it in variables. And we don't know what they're going to type in here. I mean, the weekday could be anything. It could be Monday through Sunday. The month could be January through December, etc. So we don't know what they're going to type in here. So these could all vary. So what we're going to do is temporarily store these in what they refer to as a variable. And then we're going to take those variables, and then we're going to concatenate the message together, and then we're going to output the result here. And that's all going to happen when we click this event right there. So that's the logic behind it. So now I'm going to start off by just double-clicking display date, and I'm going to put in sort of a trigger. We're going to declare what they refer to as a variable. And I'm going to put in this as a comment, because this is something I need to do. So I want to declare variables. And then once we declare variables, we can maybe assign those variables. And then we could possibly, later on, we probably could calculate these variables. And then finally, we want to output. This is a very typical model for processing. We input, we calculate or process, and we output. And the step you don't really see is the declaration. So in the declaration, what we want to do is we want to declare variables that we can temporarily hold. So we need to hold 1, 2, 3, 4 variables. So what I'm going to do is in the next video is go through and explain what the variable types are that we need to hold before we can assign them.